Why was the fuel gauge the only thing that mattered? Not the mission, not the wounded, not the high-value target bleeding in the cargo hold. Just numbers on a dial dropping like sand through fingers. Chief Petty Officer Ara Vance stood at the edge of the limestone ridge, watching the Blackhawk hover 800 meters below. The rotor wash kicked up a violent cloud of sand that looked like smoke in the thermal bloom of the afternoon heat. Through her scope, she could see Lieutenant Brody's face in the open door of the helicopter. He was screaming at her. She couldn't hear the words over the distance, but she didn't need to. The meaning was written in his eyes. "Get down here, now." The MBITR radio crackled against her ear, static. Then Brody's voice, tight with something that wasn't quite anger. "Viper 1, this is Havoc Actual. We have a thermal bloom on your 6 battalion strength. You need to move to the LZ now." Ara didn't move. She was watching the heat signature through her scope. Red and orange blobs on the thermal display creeping across the valley floor like a slow-motion avalanche. 200 men, maybe more, all of them converging on the exact spot where she'd fired that first shot 30 minutes ago. The shot that saved Brody's team. The shot that revealed her position. "Negative Havoc," she said, her voice calmer than it should have been. "The bird can't hold the weight with the HVT and the wounded. Density altitude is too high." There was a pause. She could hear Brody breathing hard over the comms. She could picture him doing the math in his head. The helicopter was already struggling in the thin, superheated air. Add her 160 pounds plus 80 pounds of gear, and the Blackhawk would drop like a stone. "Damn it, Ara," Brody's voice cracked. "Get your ass down here. We are not leaving you." She looked at her own fuel gauge, not for the helicopter, for herself. Water, she had maybe 2 liters left. In this heat that was 4 hours, maybe 6 if she didn't move. The haboob, the massive sandstorm she could see building on the northern horizon, would hit in less than 10 minutes. After that, no helicopter could fly. No rescue could come. "Lieutenant," Ara said, and her voice was steady now, almost gentle. "Look at your fuel gauge. You lift with me, you crash. You leave now, you save the team. There is no third option." "Viper, I am ordering you." Order declined. The silence that followed was heavier than the rifle on her back. She could feel Brody's rage and grief transmitting through the radio waves. She knew what he was thinking. He was thinking about the promises they made to each other in training. No one gets left behind, ever. But Ara had made a different promise, a quieter one, to herself. Do the job, protect the team, come home to Maya. 2 out of 3 wasn't bad. "I'm spiking the scope," she said, her hands already moving, detaching the expensive thermal optic from her rifle and smashing it against the rocks. The electronics shattered, classified technology that couldn't fall into enemy hands. "Tell my sister I." The sound of a bolt cycling cut her off. She chambered a fresh round into her TAC-50. The rifle was a monster, a .50 caliber bolt action that could delete a target from 2 kilometers away. She had 38 rounds left, 38 chances to make this count. "Ara," Brody's voice was breaking now, stripped of rank and protocol. "Pilot, lift off," she said, cutting him off. "That's a direct order, lift off." The rotor wash intensified. She watched through her naked eye as the Blackhawk rose, struggling against gravity and heat and the weight of men who didn't want to leave. The sound of it drowned out everything. The screaming, the static, the sound of her own heartbeat. She whispered into the radio one last time. "Target down, I'm empty. Good luck, boys." It was a lie, she wasn't empty. She had 38 rounds. 38 reasons to survive. The transmission ended. She watched the helicopter bank hard to the south, racing the sandstorm that was about to erase the sky. In 60 seconds, it disappeared into the haze. In 90 seconds, the first rifle shots cracked against the rocks near her position. In 2 minutes, the haboob hit. The world turned brown. And Ara Vance became a ghost. How do you count the dead when the sand won't let you see them fall? The desert was screaming now, Not with voices, with wind. The haboob had swallowed everything, light, sound, direction. Ara lay flat against the limestone shelf, her body pressed into the rock like she was trying to merge with it. Sand pelted her exposed skin, tiny particles moving at 60 miles per hour, tearing at anything soft. She'd wrapped her shemagh around her face, covering everything except her eyes, but she could still taste the grit between her teeth. It tasted like iron and ancient bone. Visibility was zero. She couldn't see 5 feet in front of her, but that meant they couldn't see her either. She could hear them, though, voices shouting in Arabic and Tamashek, the Berber dialect of the northern Sahel. They were close, too close, boots crunching on shale, the metallic click of rifle safeties being switched off. They knew she was here somewhere, they just didn't know where. Her radio was dead. She turned it off to save battery, but also because there was no one left to call. The team was gone. The extraction window had closed. The haboob would last for hours, maybe a full day. By the time it cleared, this ridge would be crawling with militia fighters looking for the American sniper who'd killed their men. 38 rounds. She said it to herself like a prayer, like a countdown, like the only truth left in the world. The first kill came by accident. She was repositioning, crawling on her belly across the ridge to a new hide site, when a fighter emerged from the sand wall not 10 feet away. He was young, maybe 19, with a scarf wrapped around his face and an AK-47 slung across his chest. He was looking the wrong way, shouting something to his friends deeper in the storm. He didn't see her. Ara didn't think. Thinking was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She drove her knife upward through the soft tissue under his jaw, angling the blade toward the brain stem. He died without making a sound. She caught his body as it fell, lowering him silently to the rocks. She took his water, 2 plastic bottles, warm and dusty, and his ammunition, even though the 7.62 rounds wouldn't fit her rifle. She might need a backup weapon. She might need to trade. She might need to not think about the fact that she just killed a teenager with her hands. 37 rounds left. The storm raged on. She moved like smoke through the chaos, repositioning every 20 minutes, never staying in one place long enough to be flanked. The fighters were disorganized, shouting at each other, firing wildly into the brown void. Panic was setting in. Their commanders had sent them to capture or kill an American sniper, but the storm had turned the hunt into a nightmare. They couldn't see. They couldn't coordinate. All they could do was wander and hope. Ara used that. She found a crevice between 2 boulders and wedged herself inside, invisible unless someone literally stepped on her. From there she watched, waited. The wind howled, the sand hissed, and when the fighters stumbled past her hide site close enough to touch, she let them go. She wasn't hunting, she was surviving. But survival required mathematics. 200 men searching an area roughly 1 square kilometer. If they were smart, they'd establish a perimeter and sweep inward. If they were desperate, they'd cluster near the most likely hide sites, the high ground, the rock formations, anywhere with a tactical advantage. Ara had been trained to think like her enemy, and right now, her enemy was thinking she was already dead or dying. That was her advantage. The second kill was necessary. A fighter had set up a checkpoint at the only path down the eastern side of the ridge. He was sitting on a rock, smoking a cigarette, his rifle across his lap. He thought he was safe. He thought the storm would hide him. He was wrong. Ara approached from behind, moving in the brief moments when the wind gusted hardest and the sand became a solid curtain. She was 3 feet away when he sensed something and started to turn. She put the suppressed Glock, taken from her kit, against the base of his skull and fired once. The sound was swallowed by the wind. The body slumped forward. She dragged it behind the rocks and kept moving. 37 rounds left. She didn't feel anything. Not guilt, not satisfaction, just the dull, mechanical awareness that she was still alive and they were not. The storm began to ease after 4 hours. The wind dropped from a howl to a moan. Visibility stretched from 5 feet to 50, and that's when the real work began. They found her position. Not her, her original hide site, the limestone shelf where she'd fired that first shot. She watched from 400 meters away as a group of 20 fighters surrounded the spot, rifles raised, shouting in triumph. They thought they had her cornered. They thought she was trapped. Ara settled into a prone position behind a cluster of rocks. She deployed the bipod on her TAC-50 and looked through the scope. The world snapped into focus. 20 men, clustered together, celebrating. It was a mistake. She exhaled slowly, emptying her lungs. The reticle settled on the chest of the man in the center, the one shouting orders, the one the others deferred to. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked. The .50 caliber round traveled at 2,800 feet per second. It hit the commander in the sternum and didn't stop. The hydrostatic shock liquefied his internal organs. The exit wound took his spine with it. He folded like a puppet with cut strings. 3. The others scattered, diving for cover, firing blindly in every direction. Ara cycled the bolt. Clack, clack. The brass casing ejected, spinning through the air, landing in the sand with a soft tink. She fired again, a fighter running for a boulder. The round hit him in the pelvis, shattering bone, dropping him mid-stride. 4. Clack, clack, fire. A man trying to drag his wounded friend. Both rounds caught them. 5, 6. They couldn't see her. The muzzle flash was hidden by the rocks. The sound of the rifle was distorted by the wind and distance. To them, death was coming from nowhere, from the sky, from God himself. Panic spread like fire. The fighters broke and ran, sprinting down the ridge in a chaotic mass. Ara let them go. She wasn't a murderer. She was a professional. You don't shoot men in the back unless they're actively threatening you. But she remembered their faces. She marked their positions. And when the sun began to set and the temperature dropped 40 degrees in an hour, she knew they'd be back. They'd camp. They'd light fires. They'd think they were safe in numbers. They were wrong. The night belonged to her. By dawn, the count had reached 15. 15 men who'd come hunting a ghost and found something worse. 15 men who'd made the mistake of thinking she was just a woman, just a stranded soldier, just a target. She moved through their camp like a shadow, silent and invisible, a knife here, a suppressed shot there, always from behind, always quick. She took their water, their food, their ammunition. She left the bodies where they fell. By noon, the count was 23. By sunset, 31. And somewhere in the mathematics of survival, Ara Vance stopped counting the rounds she had left. She started counting the rounds she'd used. Because each one meant she was still here. Each one meant Maya would see her mother again. 38 rounds. 38 men. The numbers would match before this was over. She knew that now. The desert didn't make promises, it only made ghosts, and Ara had become both. What does it mean to become the thing you kill? The question hung in Ara's mind as she sat in the dark on the fourth night, her back against cold stone, her rifle across her lap. 38. The number was complete now. 38 men dead. 38 rounds fired. The mathematical perfection of it felt obscene, like the universe was keeping score in a game she'd never agreed to play. Her hands were steady. That was the worst part. They should have been shaking. She should have been crying or screaming or breaking down into some recognizable form of human trauma. But her hands were steady. Her heartbeat was 60 beats per minute. Her breathing was controlled. She was operating. The militia had pulled back after the third day. Not because they'd given up, but because they'd realized what they were hunting. The survivors, and there were survivors, maybe 50 or 60 who'd never come close enough for her to engage, had retreated to the village of Alphaseer. She'd watched them through her scope, seen them arguing with their commanders, seen the fear in their body language. They'd lost nearly a fifth of their force to a single operator they'd never even seen clearly. Ara knew what they were thinking. Jinn, demon, American drone operator with satellite imaging and infinite ammunition, anything but the truth. The truth was simpler. She was just better trained, better disciplined, better motivated. They wanted to kill an enemy. She wanted to get home to her daughter. The math was never in their favor. On the fifth day, the rescue came. Not from her team, not from the Navy, from a mistake. She was hunkered in a dried riverbed, rationing the last of her water, taken from dead men's canteens, boiled over a makeshift fire she'd built in a cave and extinguished before dawn when she heard the sound. Rotors, distant but distinct. A Chinook twin-bladed heavy lift. Not American. The sound's signature was wrong. She pressed herself flat against the sand and watched. The helicopter circled the village twice before landing in the center of the market square. Men poured out, not militia, regular soldiers, uniforms, berets, Malian army, and with them something that made Ara's blood freeze. A white UN vehicle. She glassed the scene through her scope. A man in civilian clothes was stepping out of the Chinook, surrounded by bodyguards. European, tall, clean-shaven. He was gesturing at the village, talking to the Malian commander, pointing at the ridge where Ara had been operating. They were investigating. Someone had reported the massacre. Someone had called in the authorities. And now they were here, trying to make sense of the 38 bodies scattered across 5 square kilometers of desert. Ara lowered the scope. She closed her eyes. This was the decision point. She could wait, hide, try to evade until another extraction window opened, or she could do the unthinkable. She could surrender. Not to the militia, to the Malians, to the UN. She was a U.S. service member operating in a foreign country without official clearance. If she surrendered, there would be questions, hearings, international incidents, but she'd be alive. She'd be processed through official channels. She'd go home. Maybe. Or they'd hand her over to the local authorities who were funded and equipped by the same warlord network she just decimated. And she'd disappear into a black site prison, never to be heard from again. 60-40 odds, maybe. She was considering those odds when the radio in her pocket crackled to life. She'd forgotten she even had it. The battery should have been dead 3 days ago, but something, some lingering charge, some miracle of lithium-ion chemistry, brought it back from the void. Viper 1, this is Reaper 27. Authenticate Broken Arrow. Ara's hand shot to the radio. Broken Arrow. The code for a downed operator behind enemy lines. Someone was looking for her, someone official. She keyed the mic. Reaper 27, Viper 1. Authentication, Nightfall, I am alive, I am combat effective, I am ready for extraction. The pause that followed felt like an eternity. Then Viper 1, be advised. Extraction is denied. Repeat, extraction is denied. Your orders are to maintain position and avoid contact. UN forces are investigating the area. Any U.S. involvement will create an international incident. You are to remain dark until situation resolves. Ara stared at the radio. She felt something cold and sharp sliding into her chest. Not a bullet, worse, understanding. Say again, Reaper. Did you just order me to hide from a UN rescue operation? Affirmative, Viper. Higher command has assessed that your presence in-country is politically untenable. Extraction will be coordinated once international presence withdraws. Estimate 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 more days in the desert with no water, no food, and a UN team potentially stumbling across evidence of 38 kills that couldn't be explained away. Reaper, Ara said, her voice dropping into a tone that was barely recognizable as human. I have been behind enemy lines for 5 days. I am dehydrated, low on ammunition, and surrounded by hostile forces. I am requesting immediate extraction under Article 5 of the Geneva Convention. Viper, your request is noted and denied. You are ordered to. She turned the radio off. She sat there for a long time, staring at the device in her hand. It was a small thing, plastic and circuits and lithium batteries, but it represented something larger, a chain of command, a system, a promise that if you did your job, someone would have your back. They'd just broken that promise. The decision crystallized in her mind with perfect clarity. She stood up, slung her rifle, checked her remaining ammunition, 3 rounds left in her sidearm, none in the rifle, and she started walking toward the village. Not to surrender, to survive. The UN investigators were still in the market square when she arrived. She approached from the east, using the morning sun at her back to obscure her silhouette. She was filthy, covered in sand and blood and 5 days of desert grime. Her uniform was shredded. Her face was wrapped in a scarf taken from one of the dead. She looked like a refugee, a survivor, a victim. Which in a way she was. The Malian soldiers spotted her first. Rifles came up, shouts in French and Arabic. She raised her hands slowly, carefully. No sudden moves, no threats. "American," she said in English, loud and clear. "I am an American service member. I need help." The European man, the UN investigator, pushed through the soldiers. He was staring at her with a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Who are you?" he asked in accented English. "Chief Petty Officer Ara Vance, United States Navy. I was part of a special operations team conducting a raid on a high-value target. I was left behind when the extraction helicopter couldn't support the weight. I've been surviving in the desert for 5 days." The investigator looked at the Malian commander. A rapid conversation in French followed. Ara caught enough of it to understand. They were debating jurisdiction, protocol, whether to believe her. "These bodies," the investigator said, turning back to her. 38 men, all killed within a 5-kilometer radius, all within the last 5 days. Was that you?" Ara met his eyes. She didn't blink. "They tried to kill me. I defended myself." "One woman," the investigator said slowly, "killed 38 armed fighters in the desert with no support." "Yes." The word hung in the air like a blade. The Malian commander was already on his radio, speaking rapidly. Ara knew what was coming. They'd detain her, process her, contact the U.S. Embassy, and somewhere in that chain of custody, someone in her own chain of command would make a decision about whether she was an asset or a liability. She'd find out soon which one they thought she was. The investigator gestured to his bodyguards. "Take her to the helicopter. Get her water and medical attention. We'll sort this out at the base." As they led her away, Ara looked back at the ridge one last time. The place where she'd spent 5 days becoming something she didn't have a name for yet. Not a soldier, not a survivor. A ghost who refused to die. The helicopter lifted off 30 minutes later. As they banked south toward the Malian military base, Ara saw smoke rising from the village. Someone had started burning the bodies, erasing the evidence, cleaning up the mess. She closed her eyes and let the vibration of the rotors hum through her bones. 38. The number would follow her forever. But at least it was a number she could live with. For now. Why do they call it coming home when nothing feels familiar anymore? The Chinook touched down at the forward operating base in Mali just after sunset. Ara was processed through a medical tent, IV fluids, antibiotics, a cursory check of her wounds, and then escorted under armed guard to a holding room. Not a cell. Not exactly. Just a windowless concrete box with a cot, a fluorescent light that hummed like insects, and an MP stationed outside the door. She wasn't under arrest. They kept saying that, but she wasn't free to leave either. 48 hours passed in a blur of interviews, debriefings, and men in suits who asked the same questions in slightly different ways. How many did you kill? Did you follow rules of engagement? Did you have authorization to operate in Malian territory? Were you acting under orders? Ara answered each question the same way, calmly, precisely, with the kind of mechanical clarity that made the interrogators uncomfortable. She didn't cry, didn't break, didn't show an ounce of the trauma they were clearly expecting. That seemed to worry them more than the body count. On the third day, Lieutenant Brody arrived. She heard his voice before she saw him, loud, angry, the kind of controlled fury that comes from a man who's been awake for 72 hours trying to navigate military bureaucracy. He was arguing with someone in the corridor outside her room. Shouting, actually. You left her there for 5 days and now you want to charge her with what? Surviving. Defending herself. She saved my entire team and you abandoned her because some desk jockey at AFRICOM didn't want the political blowback. The door opened. Brody stepped inside. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, his uniform rumpled like he'd slept in it. When he saw her sitting on the cot, something in his expression cracked. Jesus, Ara. She stood up. She didn't salute. They were the same rank technically, and this didn't feel like a moment for protocol. Lieutenant. Don't, he said, his voice rough. Don't lieutenant me. We left you, I left you. You followed orders. Bullshit orders. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into a hug. It was awkward. He was careful of her bandaged arm, the healing burns on her shoulder, but it was real. I tried to come back. The whole team did. They wouldn't let us fly. Said the storm was too severe. Said the political situation was too sensitive. Said. I know what they said. Ara pulled back, her face still unreadable. It's fine. It's not fine. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said quietly, 38, Brody. I killed 38 men in 5 days. You think that's fine? He didn't answer, because there was no answer. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, Brody cleared his throat. They're debating whether to court-martial you or give you a medal. The brass can't figure out if you're a hero or a liability. Colonel Holloway is pushing hard for charges. Says you violated operational security. Says you should have waited for official extraction. Says. Holloway, Ara's eyes sharpened. Colonel Holloway from AFRICOM. He's the one pushing for charges. Yeah, you know him. She knew him. She knew exactly who he was. The operations officer who'd signed off on the mission. The man who'd calculated that leaving her behind was an acceptable risk compared to the political fallout of a crashed helicopter with a dead, high-value target on board. I need to see the mission recordings, Ara said. What? The MBITR transmissions, the tactical recordings. I need access to the raw files from the operation. Brody frowned. Why? Because Holloway made a decision that day. And I want to make sure everyone understands exactly what that decision was. Understanding dawned in Brody's eyes. You think he ordered us not to come back for you? I think he made a calculation, and I think that calculation needs to be public record. Brody was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. I'll get you the files. But Ara, if you go after a full-bird colonel, this is going to get ugly. They'll bury you. They'll make you disappear into some administrative hole and you'll never see daylight again. Then I guess I'm already used to being in holes. She sat back down on the cot. When do they ship me back to the States? 2 days. They're flying you to Ramstein first, then Dover. You'll be processed through Bethesda Naval Hospital for a full medical and psychological eval. After that, he shrugged. After that, it depends on what the brass decides you are. Asset or liability? Hero or problem? Ara already knew which one she was. The question was whether anyone else would admit it. Brody lingered at the door. The team wants to see you when you get back. We're all stateside now, reassigned pending the investigation. Miller's at Walter Reed getting his leg fixed. Jackson's on leave, but we're all there, waiting. Tell them I'm fine. You're not fine, Ara. Nobody who goes through what you went through is fine. She looked up at him. Her eyes were flat, empty. Then tell them I'm functional, that's close enough. He left without another word. 22 hours later, Ara Vance was strapped into a jump seat in the cargo hold of a C-17, heading west across the Atlantic. The medical staff had tried to sedate her for the flight, standard protocol for trauma cases, but she'd refused. She didn't want to sleep. Sleep meant dreams. Dreams meant the desert. And she was done with the desert. At least she thought she was. The plane touched down at Dover Air Force Base at 400 local time. She was processed through customs and immigration like cargo, fingerprints, retinal scan, debriefing forms signed in triplicate. By the time they released her to the Navy medical team, the sun was coming up and she'd been awake for 36 hours straight. The doctors at Bethesda were efficient. Blood work, X-rays, CT scan, psychiatric evaluation. She answered their questions with the same mechanical precision she'd used in Mali. Yes, she'd experienced combat stress. No, she wasn't having suicidal ideation. Yes, she understood she would need ongoing therapy. No, she didn't feel ready to return to active duty. That last one was a lie, but it was the lie they wanted to hear. On the 5th day at Bethesda, her sister visited. Kira Vance was 2 years younger and looked nothing like Ara. Where Ara was all hard edges and controlled stillness, Kira was soft curves and constant motion. She worked as a nurse in Baltimore. She had a laugh that could fill a room. She was everything Ara had been protecting when she'd made the decision to stay behind on that ridge. Kira walked into the hospital room carrying a stuffed animal, a ridiculous purple elephant, and a bag of contraband snacks from the vending machine. She took one look at Ara sitting up in bed, her arm in a sling, her face still gaunt from dehydration, and her eyes filled with tears. "Don't," Ara said. "Please don't cry." "I thought you were dead," Kira's voice cracked. "They told me you were MIA. They said there was an incident. They wouldn't tell me anything else, I thought." "I'm here, I'm fine." "You're not fine." Kira set the elephant down on the bedside table and pulled up a chair. "The news is saying you killed 38 people. Is that true?" Ara looked at her sister for a long time. Then she said simply, "Yes." Kira absorbed that. She didn't flinch, didn't recoil, she just nodded slowly. "Okay, were they trying to kill you?" "Yes." "Then fuck them." Kira reached out and took Ara's good hand. "I don't care what the news says. I don't care what the Navy says. You did what you had to do to come home. That's all that matters." "Maya," Ara said, her voice suddenly urgent. "Is she okay? Does she know?" "She knows you were on a mission. She knows you got hurt. She doesn't know the details. I told her you were helping people and that you'd be home soon." Kira squeezed her hand. "She made you a card. It has 17 glitter hearts on it. I counted." For the first time since the desert, Ara felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, not exactly, just shifting, like ice beginning to thaw. "Can I see her?" "Not yet. The doctors want to clear you first, but soon. Maybe next week." Next week, 7 more days. Ara could survive 7 more days. She'd survived 5 in hell. 7 in a hospital would be easy. Except it wasn't. Because on the 6th day, Colonel Holloway made his move. They came for her at 600 before visiting hours before the nursing shift change. 2 MPs in dress uniforms, professional, polite, carrying orders signed by a rear admiral she'd never heard of. "Chief Petty Officer Vance, you are hereby ordered to report to the Office of Naval Intelligence for formal questioning regarding your actions during Operation Nightfall. You are not under arrest. You are not being charged at this time, but your cooperation is mandatory." Ara read the orders twice, then she got dressed. The ONI facility was in a nondescript building in Suitland, Maryland. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, conference rooms that smelled like burnt coffee and anxiety. They put her in room 7B and made her wait for 40 minutes. Classic intimidation tactic. Make the subject sweat. Make them nervous. Ara sat perfectly still and counted ceiling tiles. When Colonel Holloway finally walked in, he wasn't alone. He had a JAG officer with him, a lawyer there to make sure everything was documented, and a civilian in an expensive suit who didn't introduce himself. Holloway sat down across from her. He was 50s, fit, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of face that looked trustworthy in photos. He smiled at her. It didn't reach his eyes. "Chief Vance, thank you for coming." "I was ordered, sir, not invited." The smile tightened. "Let's dispense with the hostility. We're all on the same team here." "Are we, sir?" Holloway's expression hardened. "I'm going to be blunt, Chief. Your actions in Mali have created a significant problem for this command. 38 foreign nationals killed on foreign soil by a U.S. operator with no official authorization. The Malian government is demanding answers. The UN is demanding answers. And I need to give them something that isn't a public relations nightmare." "I was defending myself, sir. They were trying to kill me." "After you revealed your position during an unauthorized engagement." "I saved Lieutenant Brody's team. The mission would have failed without that shot." "The mission," Holloway said, leaning forward, "was to extract the HVT and exfiltrate cleanly, not to engage in a prolonged firefight that resulted in your abandonment and a 5-day killing spree." "Killing spree." The words hung in the air like poison. Ara felt something cold and sharp settle behind her sternum. "Sir, with respect, I was left behind because you ordered the extraction helicopter not to wait for me." "That's a lie." "It's documented." Ara reached into her pocket and pulled out a USB drive. She set it on the table between them. MBITR transmission logs, encrypted tactical comms, everything from the operation, including the part where you radioed Reaper 27 and ordered them to deny my extraction request because, quote, "the political situation is too sensitive." The room went very quiet. Holloway stared at the USB drive like it was a live grenade. The JAG officer cleared his throat. "Chief Vance, how did you obtain classified transmission logs?" "Lieutenant Brody gave them to me. He thought I should know why my team left me to die." Holloway's face went white, then red. "You have no idea what you're talking about. That transmission was taken out of context. I was following orders from AFRICOM. The decision was made at levels far above my pay grade." "Then let's bring those levels into this room," Ara said, her voice still perfectly calm. "Let's get the admiral who signed off on abandoning a U.S. service member in hostile territory. Let's get the AFRICOM commander who decided my life was worth less than avoiding a diplomatic incident. Let's put all of it on the record." The civilian in the suit spoke for the first time. His voice was soft, dangerous. "Chief Vance, you're playing a very dangerous game. If you release those files publicly, you'll be charged with violating the Espionage Act. You'll spend the next 20 years in Leavenworth." Ara looked at him. "And if I don't release them, I'll be court-martialed for murder and spend the next 20 years in Leavenworth anyway. At least this way, people will know why." Holloway stood up abruptly. "This meeting is over. Chief Vance, you are confined to quarters pending further investigation. Do not speak to the press. Do not discuss this case with anyone outside your chain of command. Do not." "No." Holloway stopped. "Excuse me." "I said no, sir." Ara stood up. "I'm not confined to quarters. I'm not under arrest. And unless you're charging me with something right now this second, I'm walking out of this room." The JAG officer looked nervous. "Chief, that's not advisable." "I don't care." Ara picked up the USB drive and put it back in her pocket. "You want to charge me? Fine, charge me. Court-martial me. Let's put every second of Operation Nightfall on public record. Let's talk about how I was left behind, how I survived, how I killed 38 men with nothing but training and spite. Let's see what the American public thinks about that story." She walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "Or," she said quietly, "you can let me take my medical retirement and disappear. You can classify the whole operation, bury the files, Forget I exist, and I'll do the same. Holloway was shaking. With rage or fear, Ara couldn't tell. You're making a mistake, Chief. No, sir. I made my mistake 5 days ago in the desert. I made it when I believed you'd send someone back for me, when I believed the system would protect me. She opened the door. I won't make that mistake again. She walked out. Nobody stopped her. What do you do when the war is over, but the silence won't stop screaming? Ara sat on a park bench in suburban Virginia, watching her daughter chase a soccer ball across wet grass. It was raining, not hard, just a gentle October drizzle that made everything look soft and gray. Maya was 7 years old, all elbows and knees and boundless energy. She was playing with a group of kids from her elementary school, their laughter cutting through the sound of traffic and distant sirens. Ara should have been watching the game. Instead, she was watching the perimeter. Exits 3, the parking lot to the east, the wooded trail to the north, the residential street to the south, potential threats. A man in a raincoat standing by the tree line, but he was on his phone, probably just a parent. A white van parked across the street, but the driver was visible, middle-aged, unthreatening. Wind direction, southwest, 10 miles per hour. Visibility, good despite the rain. She caught herself doing it and forced her eyes back to Maya. The game, focus on the game. But her hand kept drifting to her hip, where her sidearm used to ride. She wasn't carrying anymore. Couldn't legally until the VA finished processing her concealed carry permit. The absence felt like a missing limb. 3 months had passed since the ONI meeting. 3 months since Holloway had quietly dropped all charges and Ara had quietly accepted her medical retirement. The Navy had given her a disability rating, 40% for PTSD, 20% for the burn scars on her arm and shoulder, and a pension that would keep her and Maya fed. The Medal of Honor was never mentioned again. Neither were the 38 bodies. The official story, leaked to friendly reporters and stamped with the Pentagon seal of approval, was simple. Chief Petty Officer Ara Vance had been part of a classified operation that went sideways. She'd survived against incredible odds. She was a hero. End of story. The truth was buried in classified files that wouldn't be declassified for 50 years. Ara was fine with that. Mostly. Mom, did you see? Did you see? Maya was running toward her, face flushed, grinning. I scored a goal. Ara forced a smile. It felt rusty, like a mechanism that hadn't been used in a while. I saw, baby. You were amazing. Maya threw her arms around Ara's waist, soaking her jacket with rain and sweat and pure, uncomplicated joy. Can we get ice cream after, please? It's raining. Ice cream doesn't care about rain. Ara laughed. It surprised her. The sound felt foreign in her throat, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. Okay, ice cream it is. As they walked to the car, Maya chattering about the game and her friends and some boy named Trevor who kept trying to steal the ball from her, Ara felt her phone buzz. A text message. From Brody. Teams at Miller's place tonight. Pizza and bad movies. You should come. She almost deleted it, almost sent back a polite no, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the way Maya was holding her hand, trusting and warm. Maybe it was the smell of rain and grass that reminded her of something other than sand and blood. Maybe it was the simple fact that she was tired of being alone inside her own head. She texted back, what time? 1900. Bring your kid. Miller's nieces will be here. They're doing some kind of princess movie marathon. Ara looked down at Maya. Hey, sweetheart, how do you feel about watching movies with some of Mommy's friends tonight? Maya's eyes went wide. Your Navy friends, the ones with the cool stories. Yeah, those guys. Yes. That evening, Ara drove to Miller's house in Arlington. It was a small 2-story with a yard full of toys and a garage converted into a gym. The driveway was already packed with cars she recognized. Brody's truck, Jackson's motorcycle, even the lieutenant commander who'd authorized the mission, now retired, now free to say what he really thought about Holloway. Brody met her at the door. He looked better than the last time she'd seen him, healthier, like he'd been sleeping. He grinned when he saw Maya hiding behind Ara's leg. "You must be Maya. Your mom talks about you all the time." Maya peeked out. "She does. All the time. She says you're tougher than any SEAL she's ever met." Maya giggled. "I'm not that tough." "I don't know," Brody said, crouching down to her level. "Your mom's pretty tough. If you're even half as brave as her, you're doing better than most of us." Inside, the house was chaos. Good chaos. Kids running around, adults laughing, the smell of pizza and beer and normalcy. Miller was on the couch, his leg propped up, showing his nieces how to make shadow puppets. Jackson was arguing with someone about sports. The lieutenant commander was in the kitchen, telling a story that involved hand grenades and a goat. It was loud, messy, human. Ara stood in the doorway, feeling out of place, feeling like a ghost at a party for the living. Then Brody put a beer in her hand. "Relax, Vance, nobody's gonna bite." "I don't drink anymore." "Then hold it and pretend. It'll make the other guys feel better." He guided her to a chair. "Miller, look who showed up." Miller looked up from the couch. His face split into a huge grin. "Vance, holy shit, you actually came." He tried to stand, winced, sat back down. "Come here, I need to show you something." Ara crossed the room. Miller pulled up his pant leg, revealing a prosthetic from the knee down. Carbon fiber and titanium. High tech. "They gave me the fancy running model," he said proudly. "I'm doing a 10K next month. You should join." "I don't run anymore," Ara said. "Bullshit. You ran 5 days through a desert. A 10K is nothing." She looked at him, at his stupid grin and his ridiculous optimism, and the fact that he'd almost died because she'd made a call that saved his life. "Maybe," she said quietly. "That's not a no." Miller reached out and squeezed her good shoulder. "We're glad you're here, Vance. We're glad you made it home." The words hit harder than they should have. Made it home. She looked around the room, at these men who'd gone through hell with her, who'd left her and come back, who'd fought to get her out even when the system told them to stand down. They weren't perfect. They'd made mistakes, but they were here. And so was she. "Yeah," she said, her voice rough. "Me too." The evening blurred into a comfortable haze. Pizza, bad movies, Maya bonding with Miller's nieces over some animated film about talking animals, Brody telling a story about the time Jackson got stuck in a porta potty during a training exercise. Laughter, real laughter. Around midnight, after Maya had fallen asleep on the couch and the other kids had been shuttled off to bedrooms, the mood shifted. The adults gathered in the kitchen. Someone poured whiskey. Someone else asked the question nobody wanted to ask. "How are you really doing, Vance?" She looked at her reflection in the dark window. She could see the desert in her eyes. She could feel the weight of the rifle that wasn't there anymore. She could hear the sound of rounds cycling and bodies falling, and the wind that never stopped screaming. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I'm here, I'm functional, I'm trying to be a good mom, but there's this thing, this silence that won't shut up. Does that make sense?" "Yeah," Brody said quietly, "it makes sense." "Does it get better?" "I don't know, but it gets different, more manageable." He raised his glass. "To the ghosts we carry, may they teach us to be better than we were." They drank. And for a moment, in that kitchen full of broken people trying to be whole, Ara felt something she hadn't felt since the desert. Not peace, not exactly, but the possibility of it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all any of them could ask for. She looked at Maya sleeping on the couch, peaceful and safe. She thought about the 38 men who tried to take this away from her, who tried to make her just another body in the sand. They'd failed. She'd won. Not because she was stronger or smarter or more ruthless, But because she'd refused to accept the calculation that said her life was worth less than political convenience, she'd refused to be erased. She'd fought her way out of the grave they'd dug for her. And now, standing in this warm kitchen with these imperfect people who understood what it meant to survive, she made a different kind of promise. She would carry the weight of what she'd done, the 38, the kills, the choices, but she wouldn't let it define her. She was more than a body count, more than a ghost. She was Aura Vance, mother, survivor, human being. And if anyone ever tried to threaten that again, if anyone ever tried to sacrifice her or the people she loved to cover their own mistakes, they would learn what the desert had already taught her enemies. Some ghosts don't stay buried. Some ghosts come home. And some ghosts are just getting started. She picked up her daughter, cradling her carefully against her chest. Maya stirred, mumbled something about ice cream, then settled back into sleep. Brody walked her to the car. Same time next month. Maybe. I'll take it, he hesitated. You know we're here, right? If you need anything, if it gets bad, you call. No radios, Ara said, echoing their old joke. No radios, Brody agreed. She drove home through empty streets, Maya sleeping in the backseat, the radio playing something soft and forgettable. She thought about dignity, about silence, about the way strength sometimes looks like surrender and survival sometimes looks like defeat. She thought about the ridge where she'd counted rounds and men and chances. She thought about the choice she'd made to come home. And she realized something that would have surprised the woman she'd been 5 months ago in that briefing room, confident and whole and naive. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, it survives, it endures. And when the desert finally stops screaming, it learns to live again. One day at a time. One breath at a time. One moment of grace in a kitchen full of broken people who refuse to stay broken. That was enough. That would always be enough. The desert was behind her now. The rest of her life was ahead. And Ara Vance, chief petty officer, sniper, survivor, ghost, was finally ready to live it.